Hello, good morning. Good morning. It is the 22nd of November 2022. It's almost 9 o'clock in the morning. We've got about 30 minutes before the market opens here, and what I'm planning on doing today is taking a look at the S&P 500, both the cash index and also futures. I also want to take a look at Bitcoin because there's, obviously some interesting things going on over there as well. A little bit of a pop-up here this morning. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look at things. Before I get into all of this, as you all know, this is not financial advice, and I'm not your financial advisor. You're responsible for your own trades, manage your own risk, do your own research, and I'm just giving my opinion on the market. Just continuing as such, I don't prepare a whole lot of things ahead of time. I like to be, raw and open, and just, what you see here is the real me. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll kind of see things as I go. So, hopefully this is helpful for you. Of course, if it is, the deal, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We'd love to have you in our Discord as well. You can find all of that information on BitDoctor.org. So let's go ahead and take a look at the chart. So this whole move so far is continuing to look a little corrective. And I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I say that the moves are corrective. So what it looks like we're in the middle of creating here, it's just continuing to look this way. And if I go ahead and let's see here, if I can hide all my drawings, just looking at this, we're just sort of moving sideways and up. But the key here, and I'm going to have to show my show everything on here for the time being. The key here is I'm going to outline this. I'm going to use this arrow tool. I just want to show you that, looking at this move right here, this looks like a corrective move. One of the reasons why it looks like a corrective move is because here is a peak and here is a trough. We overlap. All right. So, and again, looking at this move up here, this is a peak. We've got a trough here. There is an overlap. So we are continuing to see lots and lots of overlap on these moves. We saw it on a minor degree over here, overlap here as well. And we actually had a little bit of overlap on this move over here as well. The more overlap that you get, the more corrective that structure becomes. And this looks so far pretty darn corrective. I think what a lot of people are trying to do, and I'm just going to add two more lines onto this and I'll remove them just to keep things clean. From this dominant pivot low here, kind of pulling this up, looking at it from this perspective. But when you look at the upper part of this, I'm going to start right here. This looks like a pretty dominant point. Pull this up here to that dominant pivot. I think we can all agree that we've got a dominant pivot here and a dominant pivot here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this guy back and see where he starts. It starts basically right here on this peak, and that was on Friday, October 7th. So it doesn't look so far that we're compressing really super hard here, but what I will say is this wave C that I have up here, 4150, it actually may take longer to get here. And when I look at things, I'm going to kind of clean this up just a little bit here. I'm going to remove some of these guys. I'm going to remove the 50, the 618, and the 65. I'm just going to try and clean things up a little bit so it doesn't look too messy. It's pretty obvious that we had a good bottom here at the 382. And we didn't really have, a whole lot of like retesting of that area. We got down there and we pretty much bounced right off of it. But looking at the time duration of, say, for example, this move right here, that wave structure took a decent amount of time to complete. It took, almost a week. It went actually 2 weeks from basically October 12th, October 14th to the beginning of November. So that took a couple weeks for that wave structure to complete. And then what did we see? Well, we saw a correction to the downside of that. And of course, it didn't take quite as long for that to complete, but it still took, about a week. So with that time duration, what I'm going to then be looking for is I'm going to be looking for this final move up to take, roughly the amount of time it took for this correction here to complete. So we take basically from the beginning to the end of this correction, then we get the correction of that move. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 618 and I'm going to put the 1 on there. Okay, so if we take a look at it from this perspective, from a time basis, we're going to basically be looking at, it's really Monday for this move to complete. So is it possible this wave B is not in yet and that we see a move down into the end of this week before we see a move up? I would prefer for that to happen at the end of the day. So if we do see a move down into Wednesday, maybe it's later in the day on Wednesday, and then typically what tends to happen on Thanksgiving Day, right? So I'm on the ES futures chart. So on Thanksgiving Day, futures are actually open. They open on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. as per usual. They do close a little early in the day on Thursday, and then futures also open on Thursday evening as per usual. And then, of course, they close about 15 minutes after the cash session closes on Friday. So we have extra trading hours that are usually, met with low liquidity, and we're likely going to see some volatility into Friday. And that would set up a move up here into the 4150 area by Monday. And in my opinion, that would be the completion of this correction. Just kind of taking a look at all of this. And of course, it doesn't have to hit this perfectly. Trying to pinpoint the time of the move, the timing of the move, sometimes is the hardest part of the market. You hear a lot of people say that time in the market beats timing the market. And, that's almost the case here. So what am I expecting? What am I expecting going into Friday or Monday? Well, I'm expecting more than likely we're going to see a little bit of a move down. And coincidentally, this move down, depending on whether it is tomorrow or whether it's, maybe tomorrow afternoon, doesn't really matter to me on when it is. But if we do get this move down, well, that's really a perfect retest of this high right here. So let's just keep an eye on that, understanding that's probably going to be a decent amount of support. But really what's more important that I would love to see is I'd love to see a little bit of overlap. Okay, if we get a little overlap, then that really increases my confidence in this move, because quite frankly, what a lot of people are looking at this from this spot right here, they're looking at this as a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3, working on the 4 and then going up for 5. That would be kind of an impulsive move. I don't really want to see that happen. Ultimately, that target would still be sitting up there at 41.54. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about what 41.54 is. So let's get rid of the time structure on there. We've got our fibs. I want to talk about 41.54. Okay, so this 100% target basically was measuring this move right here, and then we're getting the pullback to this wave B. And then the 100% was at 39.28. We hit that perfectly. Okay, then looking at this a little more, right, we got this target perfectly. So let's take a look at the next move. All right, so looking at this, we're now basically taking this entire move here and we're getting the pullback to this dominant pivot low. 41.54 is sitting right there waiting for us. Now, are we going to get there? That's the big question. Are we actually going to get up that high? If we do, of course, I'm going to be looking at getting back into some short positions here. I've been patiently waiting, and the market has been brutally boring the majority of the week. Now, of course, we got some good plays on Tesla yesterday, and there's still potential that we are going to see some more volatility into the end of the week. But so far this week, it's just been just mind-numbingly boring. And that tends to happen on the week of Thanksgiving because a lot of institutions aren't trading this week. There's just not a whole lot of volume this week that can, control the market. So it doesn't take a whole lot of money to move the market, but it also does take a certain amount of interest to get the market moving. What I can say is we have been moving and compressing. And so when we do get a move, we are likely going to get a pretty violent move. And whether or not that's going to be a violent move to the upside or the downside, what I'm looking at is a potential move. If this diagonal here breaks down, we are more than likely we're going to hit this lower rail, and then from there I think we're going to move up pretty quickly up to this top target to complete that move. Now again, more confluence at 4150, 4154. That target's going to be sitting there, 4154. Currently, we're being rejected by this golden zone here, right? So we had the 618, the 65, right at about 4012 to 4040, right? So we had a good rejection off of that. If we break up above that, and again, if it happens pretty quickly, the next level that we should be paying attention to is the 786. All right, so let me just zoom out a little bit and just kind of show you where this is coming from. So what we've got here is this dominant pivot high, and this was at about 43.25, 43.27, okay? Which happened to be the golden zone, by the way. It happened to be the golden zone from that whole move down. Now, I guess I'll go back there here in a moment just to talk about that. But from this dominant pivot high here all the way to this bottom down here at 3,500, we had some rejection here at the 618. And then the next level of interest is that 786. So what that would complete, right? What that would then complete, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit since we've talked about all of this, talking about the importance of that 786. If we get up there, what this is looking to me to be completing is from down here of W, and then an X, and then a Y. And then of course is on a higher degree. I'm gonna go ahead and keep the color the way that it is here. I'm gonna kind of clean these off just to kind of remove some of the subdivision that I've got in there. But that would be a completion of a zigzag. So we've got 3 waves up, 3 waves down, and then A, B, C to go back up here to complete wave Y for that zigzag. So the potential for this to happen is pretty high, and one of the main reasons why is the rejection that we did have here at this 618. It was a good rejection, and obviously it was met with us making a new low, right? And I guess what I'll do is I do kind of want to go back here and talk about this golden zone, because what this is pulled off of, going into this, looking at it from here, from the all-time high here to this dominant pivot low down here, we hit that 618 perfectly. And so far, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down, and then we're working on that zigzag to correct the move. Now, if we do go up to this 786, the chances of us getting all the way down here to 3,300, below 3,300, it does get a little lower. The higher that you go, the higher that your lower target is going to be. I always talk about if you do get a 618 rejection, your target's going to be that negative 236. So this is going to continue to sit here at 3,400. If we do go up here to the 786, it's possible 3,400 is all that we're going to get. It is very possible that that's all we're going to get on this move. But ultimately, what I'm looking for is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down, W, X, Y, get our 3 waves up, and then we're going to be looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down. And what I'd really like to see, I'd like to see that before the end of the year, but it is possible we don't see that until maybe early next year. It's very possible that that is what's going to happen. Okay, so now that we've discussed this, let's talk about Bitcoin for a moment. So Bitcoin has kind of been in this, it's been falling off this cliff for a while, obviously. And this is an older chart, so let me go ahead and clean this off just a little. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to clear everything off of here, and I'm going to go to a daily chart. And what I want to look at is, the fact that we are seeing, a new low here. And I want to talk a little bit about wedges. So I'm going to take this dominant pivot low right here, and I'm going to kind of pull this guy down. This has been holding us for quite some time, right? We've got a touch here, and a touch here. And it would not surprise me for us to go down and hit this lower rail one more time. And again, if we're talking about wedges, and I think it's important to do that, I think that we are also creating this. Now, what could happen going into next year? What I would like to happen, right? So just to be, completely clear and transparent, I'd love to see this guy go all the way back up here to 23 before going all the way down here to 12.6, right? And then we can go ahead and move on up from there. But what I'm afraid might happen here, and I guess this wouldn't be a terrible thing, is for us to make another low here. And again, this is going into the end of the year down here at 13.6, 13.750, which, by the way, coincides with this high rate here before we go up into next year, right? Next year, by the way, just in case you haven't been following me, I am expecting, at least 5 to 6 months move up going into next year before we start to see a move back lower. What I think is going to happen is we have a lot of people that are down here that are like, yep, I'm going to go ahead and get this generational buy and I'm going to hold it for the rest of my life. And in 10 years, I'm going to be rich, right? Keep in mind, let's not forget that Bitcoin, from 2015, this run in 2015 did, 12,000%. This run from 2018 did 2,000%. Now, that's a lower percentage increase from that first run, at least the one that I just mentioned. So don't expect Bitcoin to go up 2,000% again, right? If this is going to be the low here, I wouldn't expect it to go up 2,000%, because if it did, Bitcoin would be worth $300,000. Now, I don't expect that to happen on this next move. Wherever that move starts, I'm only expecting it to go maybe half that. But 1,000% is still significant, right? If it goes up 1,000%, that's the potential that we could get up to, 150,000. And of course, if we were to get that, what I'm expecting, once we get up there, I'm expecting to come all the way back down, lower before it makes another move higher, right? We're talking years and years and years of price action that is yet to come. Again, I have also said this in the past that it doesn't really matter if you buy it at 20,000, if you buy it at 16,000, if you buy it at 13,000, because years and years and years down the road, it's not going to matter. However, market psychology, right? You get this move down here, you see that go all the way up here, and you're like, all right, well, this is great. I'm just going to keep holding what I bought, and I'm just going to hold it forever. But then what's going to happen, more than likely, we're going to come back down here, and anybody that bought back here that was, really happy on this move up here, they're going to get scared on this move down here, because most of the time, they don't know what they're doing, and they're like, okay, well, all of that money that I dumped into Bitcoin back here is now worth less than what it was, even though I doubled my money here. It's now worth less, so I'm going to go ahead and sell. And that is the worst time to sell. That's the time you should be looking at a potential for a dollar cost average or something like that, assuming that you didn't sell up here. What my plan is I'm planning on, taking these things that I started nibbling on when Bitcoin was at $16,000. I think I had a nibble at like 18,000. I've got another one at 14, and then another at 13, and another at 12, and then I've got a couple more that I don't expect to fill at 11 and 10. And I mean, who knows? They might. Something like this is certainly bound to happen again. I certainly don't think that we have capitulation on our hands right now. So once we do get that, then we're going to have that bigger move up, and then we'll have a natural correction down before we see that big move up. And again, we're talking years, right? Looking into 2025, 2026 before Bitcoin can potentially see that $150,000 target. A couple things will need to happen there. The dollar index is going to have to collapse. It will happen. If you've been following me for any amount of time, we've been watching the dollar index on the weekly for quite some time, right? We've been talking about this, and Elo is of the opinion that dollar index has topped. That is very possible. That is very possible that it has. I'm not going to discount the possibility that dollar index has topped. So let me get my parallel channel here. we're just going to go ahead and mark this guy here, get this guy here, and just looking at this, I really did expect this move to, to continue going parabolic for just a little while longer. But, of course, the market doesn't always do what you want it to do or expect it to do. But looking at this here, we've got a good channel. This is a really, really good channel. So would it make sense for us to come back here, test this median, or maybe we've already tested it, I'll talk about that here in a moment, before we do get to that 120 target that I'm looking for. And again, this, if you're paying attention to the time on the bottom of the chart, that's going into November of 2023. That's 1 year from now. So it's possible this could go up for another year before we see that collapse down going into, again, if you look at the time on your chart, August of 2025. So now we're talking about a year before dollar potentially tops, and then 2 years before it bottoms again, all the way back down below 100. So this is possible. But again, I was talking, is it possible we have already bottomed here? So let's just talk about that for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my trend line here. And, you can see we've got a lot of consolidation here at the median line, but we have a good consensus right here for there to be some resistance. And looking at that going forward, we had a test of that resistance. Now, I could get a fib trend on this, but I'm not going to go that far. I'm just going to kind of move this thing back here, and just to kind of show you the kind of confluence we've seen at this level. We'll call it a standard deviation, just slightly above where our median is. You can see we have support that's right here. We got some support that's right here, some resistance right here, and then again, support here and support here again. So is it possible that we have a temporary bottom? It's very possible. Is it possible that we do move a little bit lower to a standard deviation on the other side of this, moving this down right here? Again, we see resistance, support here, resistance, some support here, and support here, a little bit of resistance there. Is it possible that we do go actually lower into this and consolidate here a little bit before we see that move up to that 120 target that I'm looking for, before we see the move down? These are the things that are going to take Bitcoin to new highs. We need the dollar index to go down in order for Bitcoin to go up, because fact of the matter is Bitcoin has not been performing very well at all since this level here when we were in 2021. It has not been doing well at all. Let me see if I can add another chart down here, and let's go ahead and put Bitcoin side by side, right? So we take a look at Bitcoin right here, and let's try and make this as even as possible. Just taking a look at this, just to show you how closely aligned these are. Just take a look at this. Again, this is part of me just looking at things as they go. When the dollar index was creating its bottom, right? Looking at this, when it's creating its bottom, just look down below. Bitcoin was making a significant high here. And again, as Bitcoin made a higher high, right? This should have been a warning at the time. Bitcoin made a higher high right here. But if you take a look at the dollar index, well, the dollar index was actually moving up. And right here, you'll notice, let me move this right here. When Bitcoin was moving and making a significant move down, the dollar index was making a significant move up, right? So that's right here. Dollar index making significant moves higher while Bitcoin is making significant moves lower after making a new high. And the dollar index didn't do that. And as the dollar index has been moving up, Bitcoin has been moving down. So again, we need to see a true pivot on the dollar index. We need to start taking out some of these important support levels before Bitcoin can take a significant move and pivot to new highs. Now, the dollar has been stronger versus other global currencies. I am of the opinion that inflation hasn't peaked, and I think we're in for a pretty significant downfall of the U.S. currency And so I think that that's going to cause the dollar index to drop. But the reason why it's going up is because we just happen to be faring better than other countries. That doesn't mean that the dollar index is great. It doesn't mean that the dollar, rather, is great. It just means that against other global currencies, it's not as bad. So watch the dollar index, because time and time again, as the dollar index makes lows, that's when Bitcoin is making its highs. Okay, so watch as the dollar index is making its lows, and that's when Bitcoin likely is going to be seeing significant tops, and especially around this channel. Okay, so if and when the dollar index does decide that it does want to come down, right? When it does decide it wants to come down, Bitcoin is going to rally, and it's going to rally hard because the dollar index has a long way down to go. So Bitcoin will rally. It will rally again. It will have its day to shine again. But for now, the dollar index doesn't lend to a super bullish Bitcoin at the moment. Again, as this dollar index could move down here going into next year, that could potentially be what we need for Bitcoin to make that rally up again going into the first half of next year. And then when the dollar index starts to go up again, that's going to be when Bitcoin is going to start moving down, depending on how long it takes. Is it really going to take another year or two to get there? I mean, that's highly possible. But from there, expect the dollar index to drop significantly and expect Bitcoin to go up significantly as well. We will continue to be watching all of these different aspects of the market as we go. So I know the market is really super boring right now. I know that there are limited profitable moves out there at the moment, but be rest assured that we're going to have a very prosperous bull market, both for Bitcoin and for stocks, because as the dollar index weakens, stocks are going to go up in value. That is a natural reaction to the dollar index losing its prominence. The stocks will go up, right? So, again, all of 2022, again, I'm looking right back here, and really what I should be looking at is November of 2021, because that's when NASDAQ topped. NASDAQ topped in November of 2021, and then in January, the S&P actually made a new high, where NASDAQ did not. So that's some divergence there. But all of 2022, the dollar index has been going up, okay? And that's important, right? It's important to note that the dollar index has been going up while the stock market has been in a significant correction. So now, here we are. We made a significant top here, and so that's naturally where the S&P 500 has been creating a bottom. But again, if we do see that move up, if we start to see another move up here, right? So if we move up, that'll likely create a new low on the stock market, but the dollar index is not going to create a new high yet. But then we're going to start to see that rally in the stock market as the dollar index corrects down into mid-2023. And from there, wherever that rally ends is going to be where we start to correct lower. Again, this is likely going to be the same path that the S&P 500 makes. We might create one more new low into the end of this year. Then we have a nice rally going into next year. And then, of course, watch the dollar, because that's going to be the key. Once we start hitting some of these key levels that I've just talked about here, whether it be the median or our deviation up and below the median, that's going to be where we're going to start to see some good divergence. We're going to start to see good move up in a lot of these equities when we start to create these lows here. But make no mistake, when the dollar index gets up to 120, and again, we could be talking a year to maybe 14 to 16 months from now, when it hits that 120, you better be certain that that's going to be close to the bottom of the stock market, and that's when you should start buying stocks again for long-term holdings, because very, very likely the S&P 500 and NASDAQ and shoot, even Russell, you're going to see those start to outperform a lot of other assets. Now, it's probably not going to outperform Bitcoin because, potentially Bitcoin could come all the way back down here to $9,000 or $10,000, and getting that move back up even to just the all-time high, that's going to be 600%. Now, you're going to be sitting in that for a while. But if we're talking about Bitcoin going up to $100,000 to $150,000, well, now we're talking about let's just say from 9,500 all the way up here. Now we're talking about 1,500%. Again, don't expect a 2,000% move again. Don't expect that. And it may not get past $100,000. It may not even pass that. But the key is that the dollar index is going to be what is going to drive a lot of this. And why? You might ask, why is the dollar index tied to this so much? Well, it's because when we're talking about Bitcoin being at 16,000, we're talking about it being at $16,000. We're not talking about it being at 16,000 pounds, right? We're talking about dollars. So anything that's tied to the dollar is going to be affected by the dollar index. That's why we put so much focus on the dollar index, because of the impact that it does have. And you have to agree with me. If I put SPX on here and I take a look at the S&P, again, looking at this here, right, we were making new highs on the S&P, but the dollar index was moving up, okay? And as this has been moving up, we have been creating new lows. And again, this peak right here was all the way down here at 35.76. And then again, a couple weeks later, we created a new low, but the dollar index didn't quite make a new high. So that should have been a little bit of a sign that we've got some divergence there. It's not super prominent, but again, dollar index has been moving down. What has been happening to stocks? They've been going up. So I guess that's what I've got to say for today. I've been going on for quite too long. The market just opened, so I'm going to go ahead and get into the market here. If this video did help you in any way, shape, or form, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And if you need access to our Discord, if you need access to our educational content, if you need access to our indicator, you can find all that information on BitDoctor.org. Last but not least, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a good day, good night, and a good evening. Take care, everyone.